Welcome into the Your Illini Nation pregame show. Andy Olson, Derek Piper with you as Illinois is set for its non-conference finale in its 2023-24 season. But if you were just here 15 or so minutes ago, you watched Josh Whitman's press conference discussing the suspension of Terrence Shannon Jr. from all team activities after, of course, he was arrested in Douglas County, Kansas, and charged with rape. That was earlier this week, Derek. And of course, now the game has to be played. We'll start first with the obvious. Terrence Shannon not being here, suspended from team activities. What was your main takeaway from that conversation with Josh Whitman that lasted about 35 minutes?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot to sort through there, and it's still a process that has to play out as we learn more details. And to go through the legal system, obviously, when you're charged with a serious allegation such as rape, as Terrence is, we're going to have to see how this goes. And I know that Terrence, through his attorney, has stated that he believes he is innocent, that they will, unless there is resolution coming forward, going to be a trial. There was a date, another Brett Barron's tweeted out January 18th is his pre-trial date to really get the ball rolling up to the next steps within that. So as far as Illinois goes, he's been suspended indefinitely at this point. I know Josh really diagrammed the processes that go on behind the scenes that will now go to a misconduct committee. I know that is essentially a independent investigation, independent of the DIA, independent of Josh Whitman, that is appointed by Robert Jones, the chancellor. So 48 hours within the suspension kicking in. So within today or tomorrow, their review starts. Now, there is no real, as far as I understand, a firm timeline on when they will have to come to a decision on that suspension. So as Josh diagrammed, that when they make the determination on whether the suspension should either continue or not continue, that will then push forward, barring some new information coming forward or a legal resolution being found at that time. So personal opinion, I know it's hard to speculate a lot of this stuff because it is a situation that we only know from the outside. I know that it was confirmed today as far as Josh's voice that what's alleged is an incident that happened at a Lawrence bar in Lawrence, Kansas, while Terrence was there for the Illinois and Kansas football game. And that originally Illinois was notified through the UIPD of some inappropriate touching that was being alleged. And then the charge of rape was the first they had heard of that when it came down on Wednesday. So really, I mean, to sum it up, Illinois basketball's had their world turned upside down. And you do also have to think, I know it's easy for fans, easy for us to focus on Terrence in this matter and how it impacts Illinois on the court. Of course, a situation like this, there are two sides of the story. And the alleged victim, you have to also keep them in your mind as well. So, but for Illinois' standpoint, a team that really was rolling, that blew out Missouri, that looked fantastic in that game, was dominant, is a bona fide top 10 or top 15 team in the country. When Terrence Shannon Jr. is on the court, he's been on the fast track to a first-team All-American selection if he continues what he's been up to, which is 22 points a game, great defense, and just everything that he brings to this team. So the immediate, as we know, he will not be on the court tonight and probably for the foreseeable future. Will he wear an Illinois uniform again? That is in question as you look throughout the rest of this season. So there are a lot of serious doubts right now of whether Illinois will have him again this season, and obviously that would mean a lot for Illinois' ceiling and where they could potentially go, because as I segue it back to you, I mean, this was looking like a team that could legitimately challenge Purdue in the Big Ten, at least make a run at the Big Ten title, look prime for having a real chance to go deep in March with Terrence Shannon Jr. on their side. Without him, there are a lot of questions of what this team is capable of, and tonight's the first chance we'll see a Terrence Shannon Jr.-less Illini squad.
I think it's important to note, too, just from what we learned from the press conference, Brad Underwood doesn't have any say as far as suspension or no suspension. This all comes down from the DIA office, and that includes earlier this year in September when they were first at least aware of that there was some investigation going on with Terrence. Brad had no say then, has no say now. This all comes down from a DIA university perspective.
Right, absolutely. And it's important that it is a degree of separation there, obviously. I mean, let's be honest, Brad has a close relationship with Terrence, obviously. You'd imagine they've had conversations. They want to be, we'll hear from Brad after the game. I don't know how much he'll speak on Terrence in terms of that situation, but I would imagine they're trying to be supportive of a guy they care very much about and has meant a lot to this team. So, but yes, it is going to be in the hands now of this misconduct panel for them to decide based on the available information whether to continue that suspension or not. Just speaking personally, I think it's probably hard to believe that they lift the suspension, in my opinion, without some kind of further legal resolution or more details coming to light, because right now I would imagine they only really know one side of the story, and that being Terrence's. So it's a hard situation for them to balance, because they could be hearing their guy saying that he's innocent, but you don't want to be caught, with a situation where you lift that suspension and he is found guilty. They have to be very mindful of just the perception, the right thing to do right now, and I think a lot of times that is to use caution. So it is a difficult position for all involved to be in. And in the meantime, we know one thing, and that's Terrence Shannon will not be in uniform, not be around the team, involved in any team activities for the meantime.
Can use practice facilities, though. That was a great question by your colleague, Joey Wagner, asking if he's still able to use the facilities. Josh Whitman said unequivocally yes, can't be involved in team activities, but still able to use Ubben because he is a scholarship athlete. The timing of this cannot be worse either for Illinois. You mentioned the momentum that they have coming out of the Missouri game. And I know that there's a lot to go through off the court, and basketball becomes such a smaller thing when things like this come to light. But the due process, as it is just getting started off the court, there is still basketball games to be played. This one just less than 48 hours after they were aware that Shannon was even wanted in Kansas. So because the games have to happen, we have to talk about the games as well, Derek. And as we've already mentioned, Shannon was on pace for an All-American season, 22 points a game, shooting nearly 41% from three-point range. A lot of minutes as well, 33 a game, and that is going to be very difficult to have to replace. Where does Brad Underwood even begin? I think it starts with the starting lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a question. One last thing I do want to mention, because I know some are wondering. I asked Josh Whitman specifically, could a decision on his availability, being reinstated to the team, being able to play, be made before a legal resolution happened, before charges, if they were to be dropped, were dropped, or a court process goes through to where he is either found guilty or innocent? Josh said that could happen, that he could be determined to play or not play, obviously, before that happens. Usually, if you go through the court system, it's going to take some time and in all likelihood span beyond the rest of the season for Illinois. So in the meantime, as you await that, yes, you look at the starting lineup. I look at this, maybe it's something that Brad has to judge on a game-by-game basis and try to get a feel for what he likes. But as I projected tonight, I would expect Justin Harmon to get a real look at the starting lineup. Of course, Luke Goody's a guy that started in the past as well. Personally, from my opinion, also looking at the matchup, which we'll dive into a little bit more with Fairleigh Dickinson, to have another ball handler out there, another guy that can attack off the dribble, and then having a guard that can match up against a smaller, fast-paced, pressing style of team like a Fairleigh Dickinson. I could see a Justin Harmon getting a look in the starting lineup tonight to join the likes of Ty Rogers, Quincy Guerrier, Marcus Mask, and also Coleman Hawkins. Of course, I think within that backcourt, which is where obviously Terrence operates and has done a lot, Dre Gibbs-Longhorn could get a chance to play some more minutes here in the meantime, a chance, maybe a shorter leash in terms of him coming in the game and trying to make an impact. Of course, you'll have to be more efficient as a scorer, shore up some things in terms of decision-making, and then be solid defensively. But all of a sudden, what we talked about was a very seemingly deep team for Illinois going into the season. Sincere Harris's redshirt, Nicola Moretti's foot injury, and now Terrence being indefinitely suspended, it is a much shorter bench and a much shorter rotation. So we'll need to rely more on those freshmen. But of course, in terms of just picking up the slack, and Terrence as an alpha in terms of leadership, as a guy that is a go-to scorer, as a guy that is really an aggressor for Illinois, you're going to look towards Coleman Hawkins, Marcus Demas, Quincy Guerrier to really step into those primary roles and try to lead this team. So I think that's obviously very interesting in terms of more offense run through Marcus Demas, which we've seen through the post. Coleman Hawkins being more of a focal point in terms of a primary offensive guy who needs to be more steady. To his credit, he's played better of late offensively, finding a rhythm, hit threes against Missouri. And Quincy Guerrier has rode a heater of late, and we'll see if that can continue. A guy that not only has shown that he can make threes at a decent rate here recently, but also being able to drive the basketball, get to the free throw line, score around the rim. Having more of a continued assertiveness from him, although, of course, you'll be under more of a microscope in terms of the scouting report, is going to be important without Terrence out there.
What do you think the response is going to be from Illinois? Because clearly there's going to be some kind of response. This team is fundamentally different without Terrence Shannon Jr. For you, what do you expect to see out of them? Not just personnel-wise, but just response-wise, energy-wise. And is this the kind of opponent that maybe Illinois needs at this moment? A low major who's having a difficult season after a really good postseason last year. I'm not saying it ends up perfect for them, but maybe this is someone they want to see in this scenario.
Yeah, it's a lot better than an alternative of starting Big Ten play, which is what's coming up next against Northwestern next week, and then obviously at Purdue. Not to totally discredit Fairleigh Dickinson, a team that beat Purdue last year.
They did.
In the 1-16 matchup there in the first round. Now, FDU is without their top two scorers from last year, as well as their coach, Tobin Anderson, who took the job at Iona. But in terms of how Illinois will respond, it's hard to know because this is such a unique and different challenge. I think that's something that I've thought about and I wrote about in my preview is that you typically expect, and I would also still think this applies to an extent, an older team to be more matured, be able to handle adversity better, things that you expect in the normal course of a season that you could face, which of course could be an absence of your star at points in time. I would expect this team to handle that better than a younger team, a team that doesn't have maybe some guys that have been in that locker room and whatnot. Now, the different part of it is this is not an injury. This is not something that normally comes about. This is something that just came down yesterday in terms of Terrence turning himself in to be arrested. So some raw emotion still being there. I expect that is totally in play, obviously, for this team. Do I think they'll come out motivated? Do I think they'll come out together? I would expect that they would try to, but some emotional wear and tear, of course, would not be something that we would fault this team for. Now, of course, you want to take care of business on your home court when you're a 25 and a half point favorite. So, yeah, to your point, I think having a low major opponent, having a team that on paper you should handle is a good thing. To really just, let's be honest, it's a game you just want to survive. You just want to get through given the circumstances. And in terms of the response, I think we'll learn a lot about the makeup of the team and who's going to step up as far as an alpha, just as roles shift, how quickly can they handle that?
I'm not sure that any of the players on this team, Derek, are going to have a more unique game as far as the eyes on them coming into this in the rest of their lives. I don't think this is definitely a unique situation that they've never gone through, probably will never go through again, and we'll have to wait and see how they respond to that. For you, though, as you look at matchups and as we kind of preview this game, what are some names that stick out to you? You've said Coleman Hawkins, Justin Harmon, Luke Goody, guys that need to step up in Terrence Shannon's absence, but some guys to look at FDU as well that, you know, could possibly pull another upset against a top-tier Big Ten team.
Yeah, Sean Moore, 6'5" wing, is a guy that was the leading scorer for FDU in that upset against Purdue, put up 19 points. Has an ability that he's a confident player, a guy that's going to come out with no fear. Can go to the basket off the dribble, can make shots in terms of the spot-up guy for three. Also, despite not being all that big, is someone that really likes to mix it up on the glass and be active around the basket. So he just feels like, in watching some of the recent games, just going back and looking at what he did in that Purdue game, is one of those momentum players for FDU. If you allow him to get going, he's a follow my lead type of guy. You want to make sure that his night is tough, especially early on. Otherwise, FU will feel confident they may be able to settle in here in your arena. Ansley Almanor is a big guy, 6'7". He's their 5-man. He's a stretch 5, a guy that likes to shoot threes. Last year shot a pretty good percentage, 38% from beyond the arc, about 6 attempts per game. He's up that even more in terms of volume, shooting about 8 per game, 36% from free this season. So especially against bigger teams where he's not going to have the size advantage inside, probably won't be able to mix it up all that well around the basket in terms of his scoring. He will try to extend you out and shoot that open jump shot if it is there. Now on the other side, defensively, doesn't provide a whole lot of rim protection. And really, when you look at it, one of the things FDU did so well, especially against Purdue, is we like to focus a lot on offense. They could turn you over last year. They pressed you as much as anybody in the country. They still press you at a high rate this year. The difference is they're not as effective in it this year. They're not turning people over at the same type of rate. And really, if you're able to break through that press, which a lot of teams have had success doing, you put them in scramble mode, and they've had a hard time getting back and getting settled defensively. So it's led to a lot of breakdowns. It's led to a lot of free runs to the rim, a lot of open shots. They've graded out as one of the worst defenses in Division I to this point. So can Illinois attack them, maybe use the fact that they're going to be aggressive defensively, and then break that first line and get into some numbers advantages at the other end? I know, to tie it back to Shannon, Shannon's a guy who's a one-man fast break, a guy that can just knife down the court. We saw it as recently against Missouri, his ability to go end-to-end and finish with authority. Can Ty Rogers do a little bit more there as a guy that's struggled a little bit against presses at times so far this season? Marcus Damask obviously is a guy that brings the ball up as well. So handling that kind of from a team standpoint, that I mentioned, Moore and Almanor are guys that are familiar faces from last year that know what it's like to play in big games and against Big Ten opponents.
How we even begin to predict what will happen in this game, I don't know, Derek.
Hard to say.
But we will both come up with a score here. I've not checked your 3 keys in a pick, but we might come up with it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Got to get a subscription from you guys,
man,
right? And
I should have got you one for Christmas.
Not Mr. Monopoly Man over here, but what do you have as far as what you think is going to happen in this game?
Yeah, I think that Illinois will come out with some fire, with some energy. I think you've got some veterans you can lean on. Like I said, I love the way that Quincy's been playing. Coleman's a guy that's been there before. I think that he can take on a bigger role. So the thing I wonder about with Coleman and really other guys as well is that with Terrence, it was such a consistency night in and night out this year. He has been able to establish himself as, okay, we can follow this guy's lead every night. He was good for about 20 a night. Can Coleman, whom we know when he's on offensively can be a great asset, a luxury almost in terms of, okay, he's the cherry on top. He has to be more of the meat and potatoes, the thing you can kind of rely on and lean on every night. Marcus Damask, his 3-ball rolling a little bit more. He struggled with that of late. So Illinois should be able to beat this team and put up a lot of points, even without their leading scorer. I look at FDU, they're giving up 90 points to Fairfield, to Robert Morris, to Quincy, the smaller schools out there who are not Quincy, I should say Queens.
There you go.
New York, they're out there. So defensively, they should still struggle against Illinois if they're on their game. I think it is just trying to focus internally and try to limit, or at least for tonight, that emotional roller coaster and whatnot. So I do think Illinois will win. I do think Illinois will prevail and have enough there to where I trust them in this game. If you want my score prediction, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, please do.
92-66.
Still going high scoring.
I think high scoring. FDU loves to play with pace. I think Illinois will lean into that. And I think Illinois is still a good defensive team, even though Shannon has been exceptional there. I still think they can lock people down. So I think it's a big win. Maybe it doesn't come as an immediate blowout. Maybe it takes some time to settle in tonight, but I do think Illinois does prevail and wins comfortably.
I'm going to go with maybe a lower scoring game. I think it's the same for me. That I don't think that Illinois will get behind at all in this game, but I don't know if they're going to run away with this one. I think that lack of Shannon could hurt them in this one. If they try and figure out what this is going to look like. It's been 17 games since they had a game without Terrence Shannon. That was all the way back to last year in February against Minnesota here at the State Farm Center. So I'm going to go 70-61. I'm going to go a little bit lower scoring. I think you take Terrence's points out of this Illinois offense, gets you to about 70. I think it's possible that they slow down a little at the end. That's when FDU gets a little bit closer.
Yeah.
So that's what I have. I think Illinois wins comfortably. That's still 9 points, but it is one of those, I think, like you said earlier, just kind of survive this one, get through it, because it's a unique circumstance. It's going to be a unique feeling in here in the State Farm Center, Derek, and I don't know what more to say about it. It's definitely going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, like you said, you're just trying to survive it. It'd be great if you could take some steps forward in terms of, okay, this is our identity now offensively. We're going to go to Marcus a little bit more here. We're going to ask more out of Ty Rogers and ball screens this way. Maybe Justin Hart plays more on the ball and is more relied upon to get downhill into the lane. So having some things that can carry over to Tuesday night against Northwestern, obviously then a week from now at Purdue, would be hugely beneficial. But at the baseline, you just hope that they can weather this initial storm, come out tonight and do enough to win, and then try to gather yourself in the next couple of days. But it's really unpredictable, such a thing to be thrown on a team like this. It's unfortunate and out of their control, but the games have to go on, have to be played. This is still a pretty good team, but there are obvious questions about what their upside is without Terrence. But I don't want to discount the fact that they do have good players still on the squad.
All right, 8 p.m., Big Ten Network. So about 30 minutes away from this one getting tipped off, Derek. How can now the fans at home spend their time before tip-off?
CarolinaInquirer.com. You can check out my 3 keys in the pick. You can also look for Josh Whitman's coverage in terms of Jeremy Warner, Joey Wagner, also writing up some things right now as we speak on that press conference for more details as far as what Josh laid out in terms of the process, in terms of what's next for Terrence, and how that will play out. So all 3 of us are here to cover the game tonight, a little podcast, and a lot more coming. I'll also really focus in after this game and just for however long it's going to be, what life without Terrence Shannon Jr. will look like for Illinois and how that fits in the context of the Big Ten. So a lot more coverage coming from us tonight and ongoing into the week.
All right, if you missed Josh Whitman's press conference, you can find it now on demand wherever you're watching, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, WCIA.com. You can watch it as it's streamed in its entirety. Also, after the game as well, I'll have the report here from the State Farm Center no matter what happens on the court as Illinois takes on FDU. That's at 10 p.m. on WCIA 3. And, of course, after the game, as always, we will have Brad Underwood's post-game comments, the first time that we will hear from him since Terrence Shannon's suspension. So be sure to tune in wherever you're watching this right now. We appreciate you joining us. For Derek, I'm Andy. Enjoy the game, everyone, and we will see you on the next one.